Jake buys a rental property. Marcus puts the same money into index funds. They both think they made the smarter choice. They're both wrong, because one of them forgot to count the hours and the other forgot to count the zeros. And when you actually run the numbers over 20 years, the gap will make your stomach drop. Let's keep this fair. Jake and Marcus both have $50,000 saved. Both earn $55,000 a year. Same age, same city, same financial starting point. The only difference is what they do with that 50 grand. Jake uses it as a 20% down payment on a $250,000 rental property, a 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. 30-year mortgage at 7%. Monthly payment, $1,330. Tenant paying $1,800 a month. On paper, that's $470 a month in profit before he spends $1 on anything else. Jake feels like a genius. Marcus takes the same $50,000 and drops it into a total stock market index fund. No leverage, no tenants, no keys. He sets up $300 a month in automatic contributions and doesn't think about it again. His coworkers ask what he's investing in. He says, index funds. They nod politely and change the subject. Nobody's impressed. On day one, Jake has a house, a tenant, and a story to tell at dinner parties. Marcus has a brokerage account and a confirmation email. It's not even close in terms of how it feels. But feelings and math are very different things. Stay with me, because before this video ends, I'm going to show you the one number that almost every real estate versus stocks comparison leaves out. It's not the rent, it's not the returns. It's something most people never calculate. And once you see it, it will completely change how you evaluate either investment going forward. If you've ever wondered whether your money is working as hard as it could, or whether you're making the right call between these two paths, you're in the right place. Subscribe to VaultWise right now and hit the bell. Every video on this channel is a blueprint, not a soundbite. Now let's run the real math.
For the first few years, Jake is living the landlord dream. Rent hits his account the first of every month. He drives past the property and thinks, I own that. He's claiming depreciation on his taxes, building equity with every payment. Everything about this investment feels real. Marcus logs into his account once a quarter, sees the number up a little, down a little, up a little more. Year one, $55,000. Year two, $61,000. It doesn't feel like anything is happening, just a number on a screen. Now, let's look at the actual numbers through year three. Jake has collected roughly $64,800 in rent. Mortgage payments total $47,880. That leaves $16,920 in gross cash flow. Sounds great until you subtract everything else. Property taxes, $3,000 a year. Insurance, $1,500. He's replaced a water heater for $1,200, fixed a leaking roof for $2,800, dealt with 1 month of vacancy that cost $1,800 in lost rent plus $600 to clean and relist. Jake manages it himself to save money. That means calls at 10 p.m., weekend showings, repairs on his lunch break. After all real costs, Jake's net cash flow over 3 years is somewhere around $2,000 to $4,000, not the $16,920 that looked so good on a napkin. Marcus, meanwhile, has put in $50,000 plus $10,800 in contributions. At roughly 10% average annual return, his portfolio sits at about $76,000. 0 hours managing it, 0 phone calls, 0 emergencies. But Jake has leverage. His $250,000 property has appreciated 3 to 4% annually and is now worth $270,000 to $280,000. His equity, the gap between what the house is worth and what he owes, has grown to roughly $55,000 to $65,000. That's real wealth, built partly from the bank's money. That's the power of leverage, and it's the one structural advantage stock investors cannot easily replicate.
The rent check is the number everyone talks about. It's the number on the thumbnail, at the real estate meetup, what your landlord buddy brags about at the barbecue. What nobody talks about is everything that comes out of that rent check before you actually keep any of it. Vacancy. The average rental property sits empty about 1 month per year. That's not a disaster, but it's a full mortgage payment with 0 income to cover it. And when a tenant leaves, you're covering cleaning, minor repairs, listing fees, and your own time to screen and show. Maintenance and repairs. Budget 1 to 2% of the property value annually. $2,500 to $5,000 on a $250,000 house. Some years it's a $200 faucet. Other years it's a $7,000 HVAC in August when your tenant is threatening to leave. Capital expenditures, roofs, furnaces, water heaters, guaranteed future costs in chunks of $5,000 to $15,000. If you're not reserving cash monthly for these, you're not running a business. You're running on luck. Property management. Hire a manager, 8 to 10% of monthly rent gone immediately. $150 to $180 a month. Manage it yourself? You're working a part-time job you're not being paid for. Either way, it costs something. And then there's the risk nobody likes to discuss. A bad tenant. One who stops paying and knows the eviction process can cost 3 to 6 months of lost rent plus legal fees. That single event can erase an entire year of profit. None of this shows up in the $470 a month cash flow number, but it shows up eventually. Always.
By year 5, Jake is deep in the reality of being a landlord. He's on his third tenant. He replaced the roof for $8,500, dealt with a plumbing emergency at $1,400, and spent a month with the property vacant between tenants. He's raised rent to $1,950, but property taxes and insurance have climbed too. His actual cash-on-cash return, the money he keeps relative to what he put in, is hovering around 3 to 5% after all real expenses. Not bad, but not the 15 to 20% he was quoting at the barbecue. Marcus is still doing absolutely nothing. His portfolio has grown from $50,000 to roughly $135,000 to $150,000 by year 7, including his $300 monthly contributions. He didn't pick stocks, he didn't time the market, he didn't do anything except not touch it. The compound growth is starting to accelerate. The gains on his gains are now generating more new wealth each year than his original contributions. This is where the math starts bending in a direction most people don't appreciate until it's already happened.
Year 10. Let's put actual numbers on the scoreboard. Jake's property is worth roughly $333,000 to $350,000. Remaining mortgage balance, about $166,000. Equity, approximately $170,000 to $184,000. Over 10 years, after subtracting mortgage interest, taxes, insurance, repairs, vacancy, and capital expenditures, his total out-of-pocket beyond the original down payment sits somewhere between $20,000 and $24,000. Marcus's portfolio, $300 per month in contributions, 10% average annual returns, sits at approximately $165,000 to $180,000. He put in $50,000 up front plus $36,000 in contributions, $86,000 total invested. The rest is pure compound growth, and he spent exactly 0 weekends fixing anything. At year 10, they're surprisingly close in total wealth. Jake might be slightly ahead thanks to leverage, but that number hides the full picture. Jake spent hundreds of hours on his property, took on $200,000 in debt, concentrated his entire investment in one asset, one zip code. One structural problem, one extended vacancy, and his numbers shift dramatically. Marcus diversified across thousands of companies. 0 debt, fully liquid. 0 nights lost to a plumbing emergency. Same destination, completely different jury. Year 20. This is where the story fully separates. Jake's property is worth roughly $450,000 to $500,000. Mortgage paid off or nearly there. Equity somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000, depending on appreciation. He's been collecting rent the entire time, but after 20 years of maintenance, repairs, turnover, taxes, insurance, and at least 1 major renovation, his total net profit from cash flow is roughly $40,000 to $80,000 above what he spent. Maybe more in a hot market, maybe less in a flat one. And we're about to get to that hidden number I mentioned at the start. The one that doesn't appear on any spreadsheet. Stay with me. Marcus's portfolio, $300 monthly, 10% average returns, sits at roughly $420,000 to $460,000. Total contributions, $122,000. The rest is pure compounding. No debt, no tenants, no calls at 2 a.m. Same ballpark in net worth, $400,000 to $500,000 each, but the journey is completely different. Jake worked for his. Marcus waited for his. Jake had stress, concentration risk, and zero liquidity. Marcus had volatility, but freedom. And here's the one move that changes Marcus's number dramatically. If Marcus had increased his monthly contribution by just $200, bringing it to $500 a month, his 20-year portfolio jumps to $550,000 to $600,000. That's the multiplied effect of compounding. In real estate, increasing your investment means buying another property, another mortgage, another tenant, double the workload. In the stock market, it means clicking edit contribution and going back to sleep.
If I only showed you the downsides of real estate, I'd be doing exactly what every stock market influencer does. So let's be honest about stocks. Volatility is brutal. In 2008, the market dropped 37%. In March 2020, it dropped 34% in a single month. If Marcus had $150,000 in his portfolio and watched it fall to $95,000 in a few weeks, that's not a number on a screen. That's gut-wrenching. And the data is clear. Most retail investors panic sell during crashes and buy back in after the recovery, locking in losses at the worst possible time. No cash flow. Dividends on a total market fund run 1.5 to 2% yield. On $150,000, that's roughly $200 a month. That's not replacing anyone's income. No leverage. Marcus used $50,000 to control $50,000. Jake used it to control $250,000. That 5-to-1 leverage is why real estate creates more millionaires than stocks in many surveys. No depreciation deduction. Real estate investors can deduct the theoretical decline of a building from taxable income, even as the property appreciates. A legal tax shelter stocks don't have. Real estate wins in specific, identifiable situations. If your market has a strong rent-to-price ratio, monthly rent at least 0.8 to 1% of the purchase price, the cash flow math works from day one. If you're willing to treat it as a business, screening tenants carefully, budgeting for capital expenditures, building systems, the returns can exceed stocks, especially with leverage. House hacking. Living in one unit and renting the others lets you reduce your own housing costs to near zero while building equity. That's something the stock market cannot do. And if you understand 1031 exchanges, rolling profits into a new property and deferring capital gains, you can grow a real estate portfolio tax deferred in ways stock investors can't replicate outside of retirement accounts. Now, the number I promised you at the beginning, the one almost every comparison leaves out. Jake spent an estimated 600 to 800 hours managing his rental property over 20 years. Calls, repairs, showings, tenant issues, paperwork, emergencies. If you value that time at just $25 an hour, a conservative figure for someone earning $55,000 a year, that's $15,000 to $20,000 in uncompensated labor. At $40 an hour, it's $24,000 to $32,000. Add that to the carrying costs, the stress, the illiquidity, and Jake's real return per dollar invested looks significantly different from the headline number. Marcus's hourly investment in his portfolio over 20 years, roughly 10 to 15 hours total. Setup, occasional rebalancing, nothing more. Jake and Marcus both walked away from that original decision thinking they were making the smart play. Neither of them actually mapped out what this costs in dollars, in time, in stress, and in risk over 20 years. The real trap isn't real estate. It isn't stocks. The real trap is choosing either one based on a YouTube headline, a podcast clip, or what your uncle said at Thanksgiving, without running the full numbers for your specific situation, your market, your income, your risk tolerance. Real estate isn't a bad investment. Stocks aren't a guaranteed win. They are different tools built for different people at different stages. The answer that includes everything is the only answer that actually matters. Did you include everything? Most people watching this will pick a side and never actually run the numbers. A smaller group will take this framework, apply it to their specific market and income, and make a genuinely informed decision. That second group builds different wealth over 20 years, not because they picked the right asset, but because they asked the right questions first. Tell me in the comments, which path are you on?
Real estate, stocks, both, or still figuring it out? If this video helped you think more clearly about where your money should go, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this blueprint. And if you're not subscribed to VaultWise yet, this is the moment. Every video is another layer of the architecture. Subscribe, hit the bell, and become someone who builds wealth instead of wondering why others did. Now, you understand how $50,000 behaves over 20 years in 2 different vehicles. The next question is what happens when you use both at the same time? Because the math changes entirely when you combine leverage with compounding. Watch this video next. It's the next stage of the vault.